The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Steve Negron.
Hi, Carl. Nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you again. How's the campaign going?
The campaign's going very well. We're within 3 weeks now of the primary. We've been hitting the road. We've knocked on over 22,000 doors now.
Wow.
It's amazing. I've met some great people on the campaign trail, so I'm really excited.
Well, what are you hearing from them? What's their big complaint or interest?
Sure, it's really funny. When we go all the way up to either Pittsburgh or we're out at Westmoreland or down here in Nashua, we think we hear different things, but it's this great national insecurity about a lot of things. They're worried about the debt. They're worried about the opioid issue that we have. They're worried about immigration, national security, our veterans. So it's really a common theme throughout everybody that we knock down the doors. But it's funny. Probably the two questions we get asked the most. Number one is, are you a Republican? Which I say yes. And then they go, are you supporting President Trump? And we say yes. And he goes, well, then you have our vote. It's really amazing. It's they won't deep dive a lot into the issues. They just want to know if you're a conservative and if you're supporting our president. And the answer to both of those is yes. And so we move on to the next. So it's really amazing.
Great. So they just want to see the government change, get more interested in.
Absolutely. Yes.
And they don't see all this problem with Trump and his organization.
They don't. You know, what they do see is they see that he's been very effective, that they like the policies that he's put in place and that they're actually working for them, from the tax cuts to bringing North Korea to the table, to backing out of the Iran deal, looking at trade and tariffs. So what they really do see is that they like the fact that he's engaged, that he's putting America first, which there are a lot of people that really want that happening. And so they're really excited about his policies. And any of the other stuff that's flying around, it's just interesting, but it's not really affecting and it's not moving the needle at all.
So they don't take hold of that and have any idea that that's real news.
No, they don't. You know, it's funny because they think that they're very focused about it because what this president is doing is everything he said he was going to do in the campaign trail. So it's refreshing to have a president that told us what he was going to do and actually, in effect, is doing it now. There's more to come. We're excited about it. So a lot of people will go out there and say there's a blue wave. We don't believe that. We believe there's a red tsunami coming, and we think we're going to keep the House and probably gain a lot more seats. Absolutely.
I think when we went down to Washington a couple weeks ago, we heard a lot about how it's working down there.
Absolutely.
We heard from Secretary of HUD and a few other of the people. And one of the things I liked is they gave us a connection with people down there if we had some questions of what's happening in the law and how things are going, where it's going. Absolutely.
They want to be responsive to the states. And I thought that event that you and I went to was very eye-opening for me, that you bring the Secretary of HUD down there to talk to us, and he was very engaging. I mean, he's just a great guy. Dr. Ben Carson is amazing. But really what it shows, I think it's a testament to the idea of how the president's running his cabinet in this country, is that he is approachable. I mean, his people are there for you to reach out and touch to. So it was very refreshing for us to be able to have that kind of crosstalk that we did with some of his administration.
Right. And I was happy anyway of hearing what he was saying, that you might not be hearing about it in the news, but they're actually trimming the number of people who work in his department.
Right. And you never hear a lot of that stuff, and the airwaves, whether it's in print or it's in radio or TV, it's just filled with a bunch of stuff out there that you really can't decipher and work through the chaff to see what's true or not. All we have to know is that we believe that this president has put this country first. That's his goal, that's his motivation, and what we're seeing with his policies, he's doing exactly that.
Yeah, and he cutting the regulations that were stifling and not necessary.
Absolutely. You know, he said early on during his run is that if I was going to introduce one new regulation, I had to get rid of two. Well, I read someplace that it's now you add one, he's getting rid of 4 or 6.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to unencumber the government. I mean, that's part of the problem, in my opinion, Carl.
Oh, yeah.
There's just so much regulation that's out there, and you're just paralyzed by doing that stuff. You can't be efficient by definition with all that stuff and red tape you have to go through. So I think he's seeing the value of cutting through all of that, still maintaining safety and security and all those issues, clearly. But when I can be more efficient, then I think everything runs more smoothly.
It's confusing to some of the people.
Oh, you need a doctorate.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
you have to hire extra lawyers just to interpret
Nothing
things.
against lawyers, right?
No,
That's right.
It's true. We're looking at getting a more efficient operation.
Absolutely.
And he wants to help the state legislators by having a contact. You know, this is the way you can find out more of what's happening or how these laws are affecting your state.
Right. Well, I think that the young man who actually kicked off and Britt Carter, who helped there, was, you know, he's doing this for all 50 states, you know, that he wants to be able to bring in a delegation like us, like ourselves, to be able to have that kind of candid one-on-one talk and then be able to have access to them so that we can work in tandem, you know, instead of working against each other, work in tandem, because I believe he has a fundamental understanding that government shouldn't be reaching into the states.
Right.
You know, we as legislators, that's our responsibility, that we should be legislating for the state, and if we need assistance, guidance, help, then we reach out, but it isn't always downward directed, and we have the ability, and it's our responsibility to manage the state along with the governor and the executive council.
And how much information gets out on this effort that they're doing?
None. Of
I mean,
course
we
not.
were the 25th state.
Right.
And I thought we might have been the first.
I know, right? And it's refreshing to be able to know that at least that's on his mind.
Yeah.
To be able to bring in a delegation.
He's going behind there. He's taking care of what he wants to get done and doesn't always blow his horn.
Right.
Maybe he should a little bit more. But
what he's doing. You know, and we just see, you know, somebody out there will take a soundbite or they'll take a quick news story and it just fills the airwaves and that's all you hear about.
That's right.
You know, my wife says, you know, that he'll do something over here and put your attention over here, and back over here he's doing a lot of stuff that's completely under the radar.
Right.
And that people don't realize, but it's effective and it's really helping this country. So that's why I think that this midterm in 2018 is going to be a referendum on the things that he's been doing. I think you're going to find that there are a lot of people are more in tune with what he's doing in his policies than what's being promoted out there. So I think that we're going to be in a very good position come November.
You might be getting into an interesting job.
Oh, I tell you, you know, we're really looking forward to it, Carl. You know, we have we always said when we started this thing back in October that it's about being a voice for the people. And somebody asked me, you know, why did I jump into this race? And I told them, you know, I sat on the election law committee, and you've sat on many committees yourself. And the thing that struck me was that people will drive 2.5 hours for 5 minutes of your time because they fundamentally believe they have a voice.
Right.
That they fundamentally believe that they can affect change. And that was very moving to me because that's really the essence of our government. You know, we are there to serve the people. And I look back on who we have as a representative in Ann Custer for the 2nd Congressional, and we don't have a voice. You know, and I'm talking to Governor Sununu, you know, he told me on more than one occasion, I can't pick up the phone and call Washington for help because nobody in the federal delegation is helping him. You know, and so I told him, I said, you know, Governor, here's my number, put it in speed dial, and when I get to Washington, if you need anything, you know, that's what I'm there. I'm there to serve the constituents of the 2nd Congressional, to be a mouthpiece and an ear to hear what's going on for you. And my job is to help the state of New Hampshire.
Well, it's nice to hear, too, that the people you're knocking on doors are very interested in the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, you know, we really didn't know what we were going to find out, Carl. You know, so we went and we had a strategy about who we were talking to, where we were going to. We looked at the 2016 election, 14, 12, and 10, and we looked at the numbers and we looked at where the targets were in the town. So it was a very systematic approach to this campaign. And the guy that we have as my campaign manager is an old school get out the vote guy. And his idea is it's about counting votes. And so we put a plan together early on. We've stuck to that plan. And I believe it's going to bear fruit on September 11th and then moving on into November 6th.
Well, it's nice to hear that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you have enough people helping you out now?
Well, certainly, you know, I tout these young men. You know, early on we went to colleges. We went to Plymouth State, St. A's, Southern New Hampshire, Keene. We went to those schools because we wanted to reach out to the young Republicans. And they have a very vibrant and upward growing young Republicans, college Republicans in the state. And we took a page from the Democratic playbook. You know, they reach out to young folks a lot. And so one of the thoughts that we had with the campaign is we need to do that as well. So the 5 young men that I have, we have guys from St. A's, we have guys from Keene, we have guys from Plymouth State. A young man who just graduated from Norwich is with us. And that ground game, that ground team is second to none in this state. As a matter of fact, I was in Derry for a first CD debate. And I just wanted to wish everybody good luck because, you know, at the end of the day, we're all Republicans. Yeah. And so I just wished the people there good luck in their debate. And I had a campaign manager from the first Congressional goes, you know, I'm really glad you're not running in the first CD because your ground team would be kicking us right now. And these guys take it on as a professional challenge, as a personal challenge. And they're out there, you see them there, you know, we have these unofficial sign wars that we've won every single one of them. You know, these guys, sometimes the first time I saw what they did, I'm like, I bought that many signs. I didn't realize, but they're young, they're hungry, they're good, they're energetic, and it really helps me keep focused, you know, and they bring me along at the same time. So I'm very, very excited about the team. And then they're looking forward to this next 2.5 weeks and then going on into November.
Good. Well, hopefully we can use that team again.
Oh, absolutely.
The next go round.
Absolutely. And it's infectious. Yeah. You know, Carl, it's infectious when you see where we're at. You know, our campaign office was opened up back in March on Spitbrook Road, and we have people in there all the time. Our campaign office is open from 9 to 9, and people stop in and take signs and volunteer. And we know we're going to reach out to the ground team here coming up. We're going to need sign waivers and people at the polls and stuff. So, you know, we've done a lot with the limited resources that we have, meaning people. But I'm the kind of guys that, you know, if you got one guy that does a lot of good things, you know, that's better than a lot of guys that don't do a lot with little things. So we're really excited about it, and we're forging ahead. And so we're really focused on September 11th right now.
Good. Well, how do people get in touch with you or your office?
Sure. Well, we're at 71 Spitbrook Road. Right. I'm on the first floor. But you can always go to our website, which is www.negron4congress.com. You can sign up. You can reach out to us. If you want to volunteer, give us your contact information, and we'll get back out to you. So on our website, there should be a calendar there where you know where the events are. So if you know that you're going to be in the same area that I'm at, please, you know, come out and introduce yourself. I love to meet every one of them and just talk a little bit about the platform and what we're doing. And I think that's how we reach out to the constituents.
Good. Yeah. Well, you got another couple of months to go once you get past this little get out the vote.
It's funny. It is about getting out the vote. And we're telling everybody, regardless of who you're voting for, you got to get out in this midterm. Right. Because the Democrats, if we get anywhere, but specifically in the second CD, if Ann Custer gets reelected, we know that she's going to sit there shoulder to shoulder with Nancy Pelosi. She's going to sit there and try to start an impeachment process against our president, undo all of the great work that him and his cabinet has done in the past. And that's something that we just can't have. It's not just here in New Hampshire, it's across the country. Right. You know, we need to make sure that we keep that majority in the House and in the Senate so that we can help the president keep moving his agenda forward.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, what do you think that you can do for the state? Where is the best way to spend your time once you get elected?
Sure. Well, certainly, you know, one of the things that I think that hasn't happened with the current representative is coming back to the state and doing constituent service. Right. It's actually coming back, and you know, the guys and I, you know, we're at that campaign headquarters every day, into the wee hours many times. Just sometimes throwing stuff against the wall, see what's going to stick. Where we're at, we're always tilling the soil, always trying to find ways to be more efficient. And one of the things that we feel is that, you know, if we're fortunate enough to win and come back, we want to keep this campaign theme ongoing. Right. Always going out to GOP events, always going out and talking to committee members, always going out to town halls, because I think it's a dynamic process. And I think if you go to Washington and you don't come back, then how do you actually then do constituent service if you don't know what your constituents are saying? And I was actually talking to Congressman Ginta, and I kind of asked him, what was it like, Congressman, when you were in? And he said, well, sessions when I was in was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's when we did most of the legislation and we voted. But then you were off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then you were back in session. But there may be things you have to do. But if you weren't, there was kind of an expectation you were coming back to your state and to listening. So I said, let's see, I work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I can get on the last flight out Thursday night. be back in my bed on Thursday evening with my wife, and then be back among friends and family and meeting the constituents of the second CD. I said, that's not a bad deal, to come back. And I think you have to come back, Carl. I think you have to do things and have town halls. And when I say a town hall, I mean helping people unfold metal chairs, sitting down. It may be 15, 20 people.
But having that connection to
you
all
have
the
to have that
different
connection. You absolutely do.
Right.
And that's just the New Hampshire way.
Right.
Right now you can have a town hall, but it's electronic. With the current congresswoman, you get online and you wait for a number, and to me that's very sterile.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't really.
How effective is that?
It isn't. It's things like this right now. Looking you in the eye, seeing your inflection, seeing your body movement. I may say something and somebody might squirm, and then I would say, well, was it something I said that that didn't set well with you?
Something you can see.
You can see, absolutely, and we don't have that right now. And I think people are yearning for that. I think people want a representative that is their voice.
Right.
As I tell when I'm on the campaign trail, that this isn't my seat. It's your seat. I'm just the one that's elected to sit in it for you.
Right.
And I think that constituent service is something that's lost. As a matter of fact, the Concord Monitor wrote an article, and the Concord Monitor is in Representative Custer's backyard, and said, and maybe it's time you give somebody else a chance. That was 45% of the people said that. So, there's got to be this undertone as to why, that would be said.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to know their person who's making these laws and give them feedback when they're making a mistake.
And I was asked a question. I was at a small place, Rockingham Cafe in Salem, and a young lady asked a question about, was the legislation, how would you know it affected somebody back in New Hampshire? And I said, well, I would do as best the due diligence as I can, but if there was information that affected the second congressional, I'll have a state staff, and I will say, find me somebody, find me people who understand this, because, look, we don't know it, right? And we know sometimes we have a very small amount of time to understand what a bill is. But if I can get somebody on the phone and somebody that's being affected by legislation, why can't I talk? Why couldn't I call you up and say, Carl, this thing, tell me your opinion, right? And to me, that's what makes me effective. For somebody to think that you're insulated and you don't have to reach back to your constituents and you think that you have all the information to make these decisions, I think that's a bit disingenuous. Now, you can't do it for every bill, clearly, but there are those situations where I think you need to take time and come back. And if it affects the state of New Hampshire, and if it affects the second congressional, I'm going to have a mechanism by which I can reach out to the people and say, this is the upcoming legislation, just like we have a House calendar. Current, we're going to have a calendar there, and I'm going to have a very effective state staff. And I think that's just as important as the congressperson that's sitting in Washington, because that's the eyes and ears for you back here in the state. And it's going to be
feedback quickly,
and that you're only a phone call away. And so, I've been thinking about, what that organization would be like. It needs to be very, very nimble, very proactive. People would be able to reach out to us and be accessible, because as a state representative or as your congressional candidate, I think that's part of it. If not the single most important thing is doing constituent services and being able to come back here and listen. And things change, issues change, problems change, and you got to come back here and you have to listen to the people. And it goes all the way up to the north, right? All the way out west and south. And when I have a town hall, and Ann Custer did that, she had a veterans town hall, and I tried to call to get in, and I wasn't allowed in. That's a story for another day. If we're going to do it, good news is just as important as bad news. I need to be able to hear everything to be as effective a congresswoman as I possibly can. So I look forward to that opportunity for people to say, you're not doing what we think you should be doing. And I'm like, okay. Because feedback, and I learned this in scouting, feedback is a gift. And if you're not getting constructive criticism, then something's wrong, right? Because you're not listening, right? So absolutely.
You can't make up your own.
You can't. And I think a lot of people do that, Carl. I think a lot of people go to D.C., they put together the staff around them that insulates them. Isolates a better term, absolutely. And all of a sudden they think, and they're being heard by this closed circle of people that want to tell them, and it's self-preservation. I get it, right?
Well, a lot of people like to hear certain things.
Absolutely. And it's just, and we've done it in the State House, and that's something I learned by watching you and Don LeBron, that you listen, you take everybody's input, and then that's what makes you an effective legislator, is being able to do that, because listening is an effective tool. And as my grandmother used to say, I've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? You need to be listening more than talking, right? So that's what I think is what
sounds like you're getting your organization already?
Well, we're thinking about it. We're not, like I said before the segment started, we're not counting any chickens yet. But I am always one that's prepared. So in the event that we're successful and fortunate enough to win, that we'll be ready to pull the gear and hit the ground running and start talking to people and figuring out. So we've
interesting plan.
Yeah, and I think we've opened up a second campaign office up in Colebrook.
Oh.
And it's been open for about a month and a half now.
Kidding.
So, and it was one, it's very effective for us. We put signs up there and it acts as our sign depot. And we have some great volunteers up in the North Country that man that on a time available basis. And it's not man, sun up to sundown, but there's a phone number that you could call and we'll meet you to hand out signs. So we're trying to be as efficient as we possibly can. And the second CD is pretty big. Relatively speaking, as compared to the first congressional. So we need to know that we have to be very lean in the organization, but we have to be very effective in what we have. So, we're going to look at what those places are that people can always have access to me as their congressman and be able to bring whatever issues that they want to the table.
You talked about you're working with all these young college kids and stuff like that. What kind of response do you get as a Republican in colleges? And
I lean on these guys very heavily because they're on the ground.
Right.
And what you see a lot of times is all this, this First Amendment kind of issue where they're suppressing speech. What they see is they see a lot of kids that believe in kind of the platforms that we as conservatives have, but are a little bit afraid to come out and talk about it. So it's kind of like, not that there's this, behind the scenes group or activity, and the kids that we're dealing with, they're out in the open and proud about being conservatives. But what they'll tell me is that there's a lot more people than you think that have a common understanding of our conservative values. It's just that the other side is more vocal, is more, for lack of a better term, active and in your face about it. And a lot of people aren't as confident in their belief of the conservative movement, so they're not out there as much. But they actually believe that there's a significant group of college kids here in New Hampshire, at least, that are conservative minded and are looking for people like us to continue the fight and go to Washington and try to help the president move his agenda.
Nice to hear that. I was wondering how they thought about their the hierarchy of the college and how they're being directed in this effort of what is it, clean speech? Or
I know.
And they try to dress it up as.
They do, and they realize that they have. It's unfortunate that they feel like they have this uphill battle.
Yeah.
But the point is, and which is really kind of a point of our campaign, is you don't give up.
All right.
You keep pressing. You keep fighting. And the day that we stop fighting, the day that we say that that it's insurmountable, it's a bridge too far, then that's when we're in trouble. But as long as there's one lone voice in the woods, as long as there's one person that people will rally around, then we have an opportunity to move our in my opinion, our great conservative values forward.
Well, I think it's a good idea, and I'd like to see that continue with the colleges, because that bothered me more than anything else. I went to a fairly liberal college at the University of Wisconsin, but there's a lot of very conservative ideas. In fact, when I was there, they started a second newspaper so they could really actually have a conservative point of view on what was going on campus, which was surprising, but they went out and they got the financing because they didn't get any help from the university.
Right. And that would always be something that, again, coming back to the state, I would always want to go and make it a point to visit the schools, to spend the time with the young kids and to say, you know what, we hear you, even though we may be in Washington, D.C., we hear you, I hear you. As your representative in Congress, keep the fight up. You have an ally in Washington that believes in what you're doing, and your spirit, your desire, your flame that's keeping this idea alive helps us in Washington to know that there's a second wave of good conservatives behind us, that it's not the deep and dark and gloom that everybody wants you to believe that conservatism is a dying breed, because it's not. And so to be able to tell them, that you're being effective and to continue what you're doing on the college campuses, I think A, would be very beneficial for them to hear it from people down there from Washington.
Definitely.
And B, I think it helps them to realize that they have a role and a position, and that we appreciate what they're doing. Yeah,
they're going to be carrying the flag. They're going to be starting careers, starting families, and that's where you want to get them, because
absolutely.
they know what they have to succeed.
You bet.
for their families.
It's right, and and they at a very young age they're realizing that they don't want to be left
Right.
With the debt that we've grown it to. They want to see people that are trying to reduce the debt, and that's what they want to take over. They want to take over an opportunity to continue some great policies and programs that our current president is putting in place, and that's how they think they can help with the fight. So I'm really excited about the young kids in the state of New Hampshire.
Should be. I think I went through that period in the '60s,
Right.
long time
Yeah.
ago.
Right.
But that's what carried on.
Yeah. Well, when we sit and talk about, this campaign fundamentally is about fighting for
Right.
New Hampshire families and freedoms. That's what it's about. It's about your family. It's about my family. It's about making sure that, this place, that we sounded 240 some odd years ago, that it was a life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we cannot let that flame die. And, people and the whole immigration issue, people are still wanting to come to this country because we are the beacon. Regardless of some of the unrest and some of the discord that you see, this country still is that beacon in the world that they want to come to, and we need to keep that alive.
Yeah, well, I hope we can go and look at our history a little bit more, because I don't think they understand the history.
Right.
One of the fortunate things I lived through was the fact that we did our history in the 70s. And we did reenactments, we did discussions of how we developed a Constitution and,
Sure.
and everything. And that sort of brought back a remembrance of what the country went through when it really got started.
Right. I tell people this country has survived a war of independence, a civil war, 2 world wars, the issue of Vietnam and this event here. We'll survive this too.
Oh, yeah.
We're a great country. I have a belief in her, which is why I'm running. I'm never at a point where I think it's not worth fighting for. So it is. And so, we're about restoring American confidence back into the people. So we're real excited about this campaign, and it's onward, and we got 3 weeks, and off we go to September 11th.
Going.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you want to say before
No,
we have to
I just
close then?
want everybody to come out, vote. I ask for your support, ask for your vote. Look at the website. If there's ever a question you have, I'm reachable. I'm not somebody that you can't get a hold of. So September 11th is our primary, so come out and vote.
Well, I know that you're always so active, except when you get stuck in traffic. Well, thank you again.
Thank you very much, Carl, for having me, sir. Absolutely.
Okay.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.